So we are now in public. We have completed our first public of the evening, and whew, I feel like we ought to be voting to adjourn, but we still have our entire agenda in front of us. So I would like to take things, well, actually, I think the rest of it is going to be right in order. I was going to say I wanted to take it out of order, but everything looks exactly the same. So next on the agenda is the HVAC systems. So, Mr. Smith, do you want me to start? Do you have a question?
I don't see Mr. Smith here.
He's here.
Oh,
Sean's here.
okay.
I see him.
Yep. Okay.
But he's on mute.
Okay.
I'll just keep nattering on. Okay.
I'm unmuted.
Yay. All right. So, we had gotten, the board had gotten a lot of emails from teachers and from parents and community members with questions about the HVAC system and how they relate to COVID in the schools. And I know we don't go back to hybrid until October, but I wondered if you could briefly let us know about the plans, if we have plans.
Yes, actually we do. So I don't know if Tara shared a document with you today. I sent it late in the day. She may or may not have sent it out, but it's I'm a member of the association called the American, yes, that's it. American, not American, but Association of Physical Plant Administrators. And they've been giving out guidance on what to do COVID-19, not just HVAC systems, but everything else. We also keep tabs with ASHRAE, which is the American Society of...
Oliver, do you have enough money for all this? In your spend anywhere money? Sorry.
Excuse us. Go ahead.
Side conversations, those are good. Anyway, so what are we doing? I guess that's the bottom line. We are going around the district checking every single ventilation unit that we have. It includes unit ventilators in classrooms, air handling systems, and that sort of thing. So we're confident that most everything's already working, and if we do find things that aren't, those will be working, be fully functioning as per the design when they're installed. Some systems are older, they don't work quite as well. One of the things I've talked about in the past is one of the best ways for us to deal with this is to provide 100% outside air. So we're not recycling used air, so to speak. And if we could do that at every single school, that would be the best way, because it just totally removes the air from the classroom 3 to 5 times every hour. We can do it in all the schools that we've renovated since the high schools. So it goes back to 2000, give or take. And a little bit before that, Amherst Street actually was the first school I was here for. We can do 100% outside air there as well. The other thing we're doing is we're purchasing and installing what's called MERV 13 filters. Those are a denser filter than we typically have used in the past. It's the recommendation of this APPA group and also ASHRAE. So that is more apt to stop any virus particles from getting through. Our plan is between those two things to run the ventilation systems for an hour or two before school starts every day, and then to run them for a couple hours after school ends for the day. That will ensure everything is cleared out. We looked at other technologies that have been talked about. One is ultraviolet lighting, but after doing a lot of reading on the matter, decided not to pursue that. For one thing, it's very expensive just to do the high schools, and not all the high schools, just the large assembly areas would easily cost $100,000 for each high school. actually touched base with industrial hygienists too, said that, and it also says in this document that I had sent to you, that the ultraviolet light depends on a certain amount of dwell time and exposure to any virus that comes through. And as you can imagine, in any air handling system, the air is whooshing by pretty quickly, and so the ultraviolet light would not be effective. We are hoping to get ultraviolet handheld lights, but that's more to sanitize surfaces, vertical surfaces in classrooms. So I know there's some concerns about Elm Street. That's obviously a very old school. Fortunately, the ventilation systems are not from the 1930s. They were all pretty much redone in the 90s and the decades just before that. So every classroom that I'm aware of in the school does have ventilation. I've heard people say Elm Street doesn't have ventilation. That's absolutely false. It does have ventilation. The problem with Elm Street is it has no air conditioning, except in very limited pockets. The media center, main office, I think nurse's office may have air conditioning, but the classrooms do not. And particularly if you're on a third floor in the late spring or late summer, early fall, it can be uncomfortable. Let's not do the ventilation though. You're still getting fresh air. It's just you're taking whatever the outside air is and bringing it indoors, and that's going to make you warm. And then in the wintertime, it's steam heat, and we have pneumatic controls, which are this day and age pretty ancient. So it's difficult to control the heat. So you're more likely to have runaway heat. And if you go through by Elm Street in the wintertime, chances are you're going to see windows that are open. That unfortunately is the only way for the occupants to control heat, short of turning down the thermostat. But again, that doesn't always work effectively. So I know that school is of particular concern for most of you and from the public. But again, the ventilation systems do work. There are unit ventilators in virtually all the classrooms. The large spaces such as the gyms, libraries, auditorium even have air handling systems that do replace the air at a decent rating, at least 3 times per hour. And I guess I just close with my initial comments with saying the older schools are going to have the ventilation that's not as good as today's ventilation systems, but it's still effective and still is working. So I guess I'd take any questions at this point.
All right, thank you, Mr. Smith. Can you sent that document to Ms. Kinsella, correct?
Yes.
Yes, okay, great. So we can get it attached to the minutes of this meeting so that people can see the recommendations from the Association of Physical Plant Administrators, and then your comments in mine. When I printed it, it was orange, but I don't know what color you really did because my printer. Your comments about how our district is meeting these recommendations. Okay,
correct.
Questions. I saw Ms. Johnson, and then I saw Mr. Guarino. I don't see any other hands. Oh, and Ms. Giglio.
Thank you very much, Mr. Smith, for the presentation. I am a couple questions here. The ventilation that you talk about, that you're going to turn it on a couple of hours before the students come in and then when they leave, and all this ventilation system. Do we do this in the winter time when we have the flu and stomach viruses running rampant in the schools? Do we take any extra precautions that we're doing now back before COVID-19? I mean, because I remember, friends saying to me with their kids, everybody's sick with the flu in the school. And so I'm just that's one of my questions. I'm kind of curious about that.
Yes. So again, it has more to do with the age of the school. So let's talk about Birch Hill, for example. Those systems are at least 30 years old now. And as you may recall, at least a number of the Board of Ed members may remember, over the last few years, we've replaced unit ventilators in that school just because they're old and they aren't functioning. But the way that system is set up, you cannot do 100% outside air in the wintertime, because if you do, your coils inside the units will freeze. Then you have a plumbing catastrophe, water all over the place. The coils will physically split, and they have in the past. That's part of the reason why we've replaced some of the ones we've had. So in that sort of condition in the wintertime, it'll depend upon the outside air temperature. Let's say it's 20 degrees. They may be only getting 20% outside air. And when I say 20%, so what that means is if your whole body of air is 100%, then 80% of it's being recycled. And then the other 20% is fresh air. So if you took those percentages, I don't know if it's totally correct, but it would take 4 more times of that sort of air flow to totally replace all the air in the classroom. So 20% times 5. In the newer schools, we have 100% outside air capability, and the coils are separated from the outside air. Then we're more apt to be able to run 100% outside air. So in high school, for example, we can do that. We weigh against that. Doing it that way, though, is utility costs. So think of it, if you're bringing in 100% outside air all the time, and it's 20 degrees outside, you have to heat it up to 70 degrees to make the occupants comfortable. So it's kind of it's a balance. It's we have to weigh. The systems are capable 100% outside air, but it's not physically wise necessarily.
Okay, so you're talking, which schools are you doing 1 to 2 hours before school and then after school with the ventilation system here? Are you doing it with all the schools or only part of the schools? Okay.
All the schools.
Okay, so my question is, we're going to do it all from the time they come back, and let's say that all the kids come back in October, right in through June. So you would do it hypothetically from October to June in the morning and then the evening, right?
Yes, yes.
Okay, so my question is, to keep the air flowing like this, and this is to make sure that we don't have the particles and the germs in the air. Did we ever do this prior to this during flu season, when things got so bad in school that kids and teachers are dropping like flies?
Not to this extent. I wouldn't.
Okay.
No, I wouldn't say we have.
Okay, that's what I wanted to know. And the letter, did you ever get the letter from Mr. Sayer that I sent you, Wayne Sayer? Because I know I sent it to the board. I sent it to Dr. Mosley, and I believe it was sent, I was told to send it off to you, or Dr. Mosley sent it to you, because he's an expert in this. He's testified in Washington.
I don't recall that particular one, but I've seen an awful lot the last few months.
Well, he sent it out because he did do a lot of, this is his expertise, and he testified in Washington. And I thought it'd be very helpful. This was several months ago before we started talking about this. And I was hoping that he could have, at least you could have talked to him, and maybe he might have had some suggestions for the schools. Let me see, was there anything else I wanted to find out? Now, when I was back in 2000 or 2001 or after that, I remember doing work on Elm Street with the heating system and everything, if I remember correctly, back
yes,
when.
we replaced the main boilers that were at that point from the 1930s.
Right. I remember we did something, and I believe we did some things with the 3rd floor maybe, or the 2nd floor, with the windows and carpeting because of mold remediation.
We did a lot of carpeting. I think actually you were an alderman at the time, and you sponsored legislation to give us, it was over $500,000 district-wide, and we used that to take all the carpeting out.
Oh, okay. So I might have had some accomplishments back then. Thank you very much.
Yeah, if I could just follow on. So as far as experts, I mean, they're coming out of the woodwork. I've worked with ASHRAE, with APPA. We've had some industrial hygienists that has touched base with us. Additionally, I'm connected through a statewide facility network that actually the state of New Hampshire sponsors. Amy Clark up there is facilitates that. So we're exchanging all the practices, all the best practices. I think we're a pretty good tab, but be willing to listen to anybody that might have better ideas.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Mr. Guarino?
Thank you. I just had a quick question or comment. I'm not sure, but I think there's exposure to UV light is not really healthy for people. So I'm glad that you don't, that we're not using it, but is that true?
Yes. So one of the methods we considered early on and quickly became very expensive was to install UV lights in every single classroom. But you can only run those at nighttime when people weren't around.
Right.
Because it one of the things that off gas, so to speak, from ozone light or from UV light apparently is ozone. And ozone is good up in the atmosphere. It blocks all the bad stuff out, but it's not something we want to expose ourselves directly to. So, but you're basically right. Direct exposure to UV light's not good.
Okay. Thank you.
No, it's a carcinogen. So, Ms. Gilio?
Hi, thank you. I did read what you sent us this afternoon, and I just have one quick question. You mentioned that the new filters will be in place for October 5th, which is when we're starting hybrid learning in the buildings. But it's my understanding that staff members, principals, secretaries, special ed people, teachers who are going to be planning are going to be in the buildings long before October 5th. And what are we doing to make sure the buildings are safe for them? Are we just keeping the windows open until October 5th or until your filters are installed? I'm just a little concerned.
Yes, yeah. Well, hopefully they're not congregating in large groups. If they're in there as a team, they may be talking 3, 4, 5 teachers in a classroom. They're not generating a lot. Hopefully they're maintaining social distancing, wearing their mask, washing their hands, all those good things. It's really when you start to close the windows that I think we have to be a little concerned. And as soon as we get the filters, we're start installing them. We're not going to wait till use October 5th as a deadline. I mean, if we get them next week, we'll start installing them.
Thank you.
Ms. Oden?
Oh, thank you. Sean, how often do you change the filters in every school?
So we change them 3 times a year, but with this the COVID crisis ongoing, we not only are switching to the MERV 13, but also doing it 4 times a year.
Okay, thank you. And I have one more question. Probably 10 or 12 years ago, air quality was a big thing in the schools. And Jeanette Katopoulos used to come around and go into every classroom in the school and check the air quality. Do we have anything like that for this period of time?
No, we were fortunate back then to have Jeanette because that was her area of specialty. We still have the capability to go in. What she primarily measured was CO2, which of course is what we expel. And typically the way that'll show up as a symptom is the air becomes heavier. And if the ventilation system is working properly, then that CO2 rate will be around 700 parts per million or less. If it gets up to 1,000, then we know something's wrong with the ventilation system. So it's something we just check periodically as we suspect we have issues, but we do not go from classroom to classroom, school to school currently to measure that.
So could we keep an eye on Elm Street to ensure that things are as good as they can be there?
We can. Frankly, it would be Elm Street, Birch Hill, and Main D for me would be the 3 I'd want to watch the closest.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. And if you could, after you do it, give us a report as to how those 3 schools are doing, I think everybody would appreciate it. Thank you.
Will do.
Thank you, Ms. Oden, and thank you, Mr. Smith, for coming out this evening and waiting because we started a little late. I appreciate you getting us that document as well. I know that this has been a topic of conversation at the JSSBC as well, and I'm sure that it will continue to be something that we talk about as we go forward. Okay.
Yeah, the good news is all our materials are starting to arrive, sanitizing. I have a demonstration for you.
Okay.
So these are the masks so that people can see the lips move. This is the adult size. There's a much smaller one for children. We have these face shields, which we're ordering. They are one size fit all, and you can really shrink these down quite a bit for children. There's an offset on them, so if you're wearing glasses like you do, Heather and I do, then your glasses aren't bouncing up against the plastic. This whole plastic part can be cut back for smaller people, because otherwise this thing can be down around the middle of their chest. But we just use the paper cut in the office to do that. So I think all of the things that we need to deal with having children in school or starting to come in, we did receive. So these are the masks that we ordered for all the staff, and I'll model it for you, but basically Nashua School District with our logo on it. Every staff member is going to get 3 of these. They're washable. They can maintain them. And since you all have been so nice to me, I'll let all of you have 3 as well. I think we ordered sufficient, so we ordered extra. And we have like, I don't know, 140,000 of disposable masks at this point. So I think we're going to be in a good position to start school when we get there.
Thank you, Sean. I really appreciate that. And I cannot say how, I'm actually kind of emotional about it, how excited I am to see the masks with the window, because we do have a program for deaf and hard of hearing students, and to have that accommodation, not only for them, but for other people in the building, I think is just, it's going to make a tremendous difference towards their ability to engage in learning every day. So I'm really, really appreciative that Dr. Mosley and the district has been proactive about thinking about that. So thank you very much. Yay. Okay, so I'm getting someone's television. Ms. Timmons, I think it might have been yours. Okay, everyone's on mute again. All right, so thank you, Sean. I appreciate you coming out. And then I think we will move on. If there are no objections from the board members, I would like to move remote learning from the very end to now, because we have a number of guests this evening to speak to the remote learning handbook. I'm certain that there are a number of parents and community members and staff tuning in to watch tonight, and they've been waiting almost 2 hours. And I think this is kind of the meat and potatoes of our meeting this evening. So any objections? All right, seeing none, we are now prepared to discuss the remote learning handbook. So should I hand it over to you, Dr. Mosley? You're on mute.
I said, sure, no problem. All right. Well, first of all, good evening to everyone. I think that this has been, probably iteration number 2 when it comes to remote learning. Initially, we started remote learning in the spring, kind of under duress in unforeseen circumstances. And now we have to talk a little bit about what that looks like in our district moving forward. There's a couple of things. If you haven't already done so, please take a look at the document for our remote learning handbook. It's a handbook. We're calling just for the vocabulary pieces. And I wanted to just thank, I'm not going to do any justice to thanking everyone. Garth, Anthony, Mr. Parker, the principals, Masha, I mean, everyone was just all hands-on this. When you're putting a presentation like this together, I had a choice. I could have made 70 slides or try to sum all of it up in less than 20 slides. So I tried to go with the the 20 slide summation, but then we can certainly answer questions for any individual that has questions. We also have on our website, it's covert-19 at nashua.edu. And really, if you have questions, my first recommendation is that first go to the 14-page document that's for question and answers. Please read through that document. If your question is not answered, then please email us the question and we'll certainly turn it back. It's important that we get the question in writing, because what we'll do is that we'll just add to that question and answer document. So,
And Dr. Mosley, what is the correct email address for people to be emailing questions about this? Because it's not the BOE address,
no,
because we don't know the answers necessarily. There's a specific email address, correct?
gave the email address out, but Ms. Raymond, what I want to do is open up my email account. Hold on.
Okay. Sorry to interrupt you. While you were saying that, it occurred to me that I did not want another 200 emails with questions that I then have to forward to you.
Okay, let me just grab it really quick here. Sorry about that. It's like, this is like radio space when no one's talking.
If I talk, the camera will go back to me and everyone can just stare at my face. I thought it was in the
Yeah,
handbook itself.
was, but I just wanted to, hold on, I got it. Wait. Okay, so it's COVID-19, so I was correct. It's COVID, COVID-19 at nashua.edu. Let me see, Ms. Raymond, if I can copy it into the message box down here. Let's see, because I think the message box is public, correct? Is the message box public, correct? Am I on mute?
People can't see it while we're doing it. No, but I believe that it can go into the notes.
Okay. I just put the email address right there. Can everyone see that?
Yep.
Okay, no one's
So
saying.
COVID-19 at nashua.edu. Great.
All right. So
Thank you.
do you mind if I can share my screen here? Tara, am I ready? Tara?
Yep, just make sure it's full screen mode so that it goes out to the public. Otherwise, we'll just stare at you while you talk about the screen.
Can you see that?
Yep.
Is that working? I can't see everyone. So
Yes, that's good.
So jump the slide. So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to start it off, and then I'm going to have different individuals come in and talk, and then we can have a general discussion. Again, the summary, it's a 30-page document. I don't think the board or the public want to see a 70 or 80-page PowerPoint presentation tonight, but certainly we're ready for the questions. Okay.
Great. So per usual, we're on Zoom. Please hold your questions until the presentation is finished so that people can complete their thoughts. Just indicate in the chat if you want to get in line for a question, and I will call on people in order. Okay, thank you. Go ahead.
So this was when we did the survey to the parents asking interest in remote or hybrid, we got approximately 9,764 respondents from parents. This is by far since I've been here, a survey that we've had the most parents react to. So that leaves about 1,700-ish parents that did not respond back to it. So we're tracking those parents down. I say ish because we did it out of 11,000. I believe our last year's numbers were about 11,122. So roughly speaking, it's about 1,700 parents that did not react to our survey or anything like that. Okay. And the administrators are working to track those parents down. The one thing that I found online, and it's on the DOE website, it is the remote learning survey that the DOE passed out to all of the districts, just asking parents the reactions to remote learning. Our document is on our website that the DOE produced. So this was not something that my administration or I produced. It's something that the DOE surveyed all of the districts in New Hampshire. This gives you just a brief, what I call snapshot of some of the highlights of what people's reactions of remote learning. So the number of parents in Nashua that reacted to the survey was 2,612. And the New Hampshire DOE had a document called New Hampshire Reopening and Redesign Survey. And these are some of the questions that our parents were asked to react to. So my overall, for example, I'll just read the first one. My overall experience with my child's remote instruction has been positive. 16% reacted strongly agree, 38% reacted agreed. You know, when you look at those numbers, that's certainly about 54% of the parents had a strongly agree to agree. And then there's 17% that had just neither here or there. And then, you know, just kind of looking at some of the big numbers that jump out to you. It is easy to contact my child's school leadership if needed. When you look at 30%, say strongly agreed, 41% agreed. That's about 71% that agreed, that had a strongly agreed.
Uh-oh, I think Dr. Mosley is frozen.
I think he's frozen.
Oh, there, I can see you moving again. Nope, frozen again. Is there anybody who can step in for Dr. Mosley, or are we stuck?
Dr. McKinney,
Oh, Tara, am I there?
you're there now. Yes,
Okay. Am I like there completely?
completely.
It looks like Heather's frozen. That's why. Is Heather there? Can she move?
I'm here, but you were frozen for several seconds, minutes almost.
Okay.
So I'll turn off my camera to save that bandwidth, but in the meantime, we'll see what happens.
All right. So one of the things that you'll find in our in the remote learning handbook are just expectations, and these expectations are there's some similarities and some differences. We also want to recognize that the handbook is organic, and I say it's organic because as we start to embark on our second journey down remote learning, there's going to be some things that we might want to tweak and change. The union reached out to me actually on Saturday when a union member came up to me Saturday. We had a great conversation around certain things that he was looking for, particularly at the middle school, some concerns just around scheduling, but also we had the discussion about special ed. But also, when we look at our schedules, there was a concern around planning for team members to attend IEP meetings as well. So what we did is we're certainly going to use that feedback. I know that there are some union members watching, not union, but just teachers and staff watching this. And we're saying that we're minimal to feedback. We wanted to get a framework out there for you to start to digest, but also we're going to make some modifications along the way. But just some highlights when you look at the remote learning expectations for each of the levels, elementary, middle, and high school. You'll see expectations. Some of the themes: teacher expectation, administrative expectation. You'll see student expectations and family expectation, and technology expectations as well. So what we wanted to do is just give a framework or a guidance as to the expectations of what we're looking for according to grade level. There's obviously different expectations we have for our elementary school compared to high school. My next slide is going to be entitled Then and Now. And basically what the slide entails is what we learned then and then what we know now. And so with that, I'll have Dr. McKinney's going to come on and talk about elementary school. And then we'll have subsequent people come and talk about the secondary.
So elementary remote instruction then and now. So in the spring, obviously we learn by doing. So we presented overview of weekly assignments, daily office hours, gave feedback on student progress. We utilized Google Classroom, and there were so many free resources out there. Teachers were using a variety of resources just to make remote learning happen. This year, we're trying to be a little more strategic based on the work of the reopening task force and the subgroups. So we had a great presentation today on Choose Love, which has a special COVID social emotional learning unit to kick off the year. We tried to be clear with your expectations around what parents, students, and teachers are going to be doing, including daily skill instruction. We have some PD outlined for the first couple of days of school for teachers when they come back. More communication to parents, parent orientation overviewing expectations, as well as some virtual open houses. The subgroup with over 40 teachers gave great suggestions on new resources. So you see a number of them listed there. One of the agreements we made in the summer into the fall is trying to maintain a balance between technology and hands-on materials. It's going to be a long year, so we don't want to have that tech fatigue. So we're trying to return to some of the learning methods that we know are successful, everything from library books exchange to paper pencil assessments. Teachers will still give an overview of the week, have daily office hours. We are moving towards competency-based grading and looking at evidence of learning. And primarily we'll stay with Google Classroom, although our kindergarten and first grade teachers will be using Seesaw. With that, I'll pass it over to, oh, I'm still going, sorry.
All in one. We'll just keep it going.
So we redefined the elementary sample remote schedule. So here you have a breakdown of what the day is going to look like. I'm trying to establish routines, everything from a morning meeting, some literacy and math skills, times for UA, a little lunch break. Just trying to make my screen larger here.
I control the screen guard. Talk about your own screen.
Yes, sir. And then as well, what it would look like for grades 3 through 5. So again, we tried to make it more clear for everybody involved to establish a schedule and clear expectations, so parents, students, and teachers are all on the same page. Next slide, please. So like I said, it is going to be a long year, and I do think our UA teachers play a valuable role in that, and they are part of the expectations from the state and included in our curriculum. So we've outlined what that's going to look like for our UA teachers. I've met with the UA coordinators the last 2 weeks, K-12, along with Mr. Parker, and trying to work on expectations and trying to clear up communications. We're working on ordering some grant materials for them, as well as including some music kits for kids to take home and obviously play some music, and art kits for them to use at home and make great artwork. So here's an example of the UA schedule, K-5. Next slide, sir. So we tried to make it similar to the hybrid schedule. We are looking for the remote schedule to look like the hybrid schedule, so that when we do have kids come into the building, we're going to have to align to the early release schedule for busing. So early schools will follow the early schedule and late schools will follow the late schedule. So this breaks that down and hopefully makes it easier for everybody involved if we do make that switch in about a month's time in October.
Well, thank you, Dr. McKinney. I really appreciate that. The next slide you'll see is then and now from the middle school. Mr. Parker wasn't here last year when we were instituting remote learning. So to get the history of the then, and he's been here for the start of the now, it would be unfair for him to kind of walk us through this a little bit. So I've asked and it's nothing against Mr. Parker. He'll be on the stage in about 6 months, but just for the purpose of this presentation, Mr. Faziani, excuse me, is going to walk us through this, the then and now.
No argument from me.
Okay.
Take it, Gabe.
Thank you.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me tonight. You're going to see a little bit of overlap between some of the things that Dr. McKinney talked about and the translation of that into the middle school. So spring of 2020, we had weekly overview of assignments, just trying to prepare students for the weeks that were coming ahead. We had a little bit more of a flexible schedule in terms of the times of day that students were online and accessing their classes. We did move from a traditional grading to pass-fail, trying to de-stress some of the students at the time. We had daily office hours. Typically, we were giving feedback on student progress a couple times a week, sometimes even daily. Utilization of Google Classroom was our direct delivery model, our modality rather. We used numerous free resources as well, simply just trying to grab onto anything that we could that was going to keep the students engaged. And we used intermittent Zoom and Google Meet times with students. We did that less frequently than we plan on doing in this coming school year. It was a second thought. So going into the 2021 school year, starting from the beginning, as of the 27th, professional development. So we plan on using those 6 days, a period of time, each one of those days, to go over the different modalities that the teachers express to us that they want to use, but they may have just a surface knowledge of, and they want to scratch deeper, just so that, again, they can keep the students engaged and we can really emphasize the education this year. We are also going to this year have some parent webinars that our tech directors, our tech integrators rather, are going to produce and put out there for parents to understand Google Classroom a little bit better. There was some mistranslation and misunderstanding about what Google Classroom could do and where students needed to go to access some of their work. So we're going to try to do better at having the parents understand that as well as the students so that they can work together at home. Again, that falls under some parent orientation piece. And then we'll have virtual open houses so that they can see the building because they're not going to have that opportunity to come in as they would normally do. This year, we're going to move to a fixed schedule. You'll see that in the future slide where students are expected to be online during the remote portion of the day, 9 to 1:43. Typically at the middle school, that's an 8 to 12:43, but we built in an hour of lag time for teachers to talk in the morning amongst themselves and give an extra hour of sleep to the kids. Hopefully they'll be a little bit more engaged, a little bit more alert. We're going to do a balanced approach between technology and paper-based materials, as Dr. McKinney was talking about. So we didn't do that last year, but we are building in times each month where kids and their parents can either do a roll by school and pick up some hard materials. There are going to be some materials that are passed out earlier on that they're going to use throughout the year, like the Study Sync books, which translate throughout the course of the year. They don't have to come. Our English language arts teachers want to get back into reading novels, class units, so they're going to be able to pick things like up like that, as well as art and band and so on and so forth, who might want to pass out material. There are clear expectations for daily practice this year. There wasn't daily practice last year. It was just because we were trying to keep everyone, I guess, sane, as you would say. But because we want to deliver that instruction on a consistent daily basis, so there will be that. We'll try to do daily overview of assignments. Really, that means is that from the assignment the night before, that the teachers are going to obviously do that that work from day to day to day, just so kids can understand what they did from the day before and that practice and making sure that it's solidified as we move into the future. And there'll be daily office hours at the end of the day for those things that students may have missed and have a quick question about. We are going to move back to traditional grading practices this year. So at the middle school, we're still in that 100-point range, A, B, C, D, E, and F, or no E's rather, A through F. We're not quite at the competency-based grading. We are going to continue with Google Classroom as our main focus and our main delivery service model. And then we are going to try to bring into the fold Choose Love. We were not using that last year, but they do have a middle school model for Choose Love, and we are going to bring that into the social emotional piece as Dr. McKinney is doing with the elementary school. So if you can move to that next slide, Dr. Mosley. Thank you. So this is the remote schedule. As I had said earlier, we are going to start the day an hour later. We are able to do that because we don't have to do any travel time. Once we do go back to hybrid, you'll see that we'll move back to 8 o'clock. We're going to do 55-minute classes. Actually, we're going to do 50-minute classes with 5 minutes of transition time, just so students can get off of one zooming into another if they need to. There is a built-in lunch from 12 to 12:30, so everyone can just take a relaxation break for a moment, refuel the body, then move into that last block of the day, and then into the office hours from 1:43 to 2:43. Next slide, please. Here's our hybrid model. As you can see, I just want to focus in on the times right now. We would be going back to 8 o'clock as the start time of the day, simply because we're bound by the transportation. So we would be going from 8 to 12:43. So again, everything moves back an hour in that. We're moving to, just for the time being and potentially just for the year, sort of a block schedule, because it's not going to be possible to really get an effective education. We're trying to fit 7 periods of the day into a 4 and 3/4 hour day. So we're spacing that out. So on odd weeks, if you will, we'll be doing periods 1 through 4 for the entirety of the week. The following week would be running periods 5 through 7, and what we're calling a team time, advisory, or homeroom, kind of like a block 8 for some RTI time, simply just so that we can get some good quality time in the classroom as opposed to these very short windows of time if we were running a 7-period day. Office hours, again, will start at about 1 o'clock, go to 2:43. That's Monday through Thursday. Friday, they're going to be by appointment from 8 to 1 p.m. And then PLC time or just some professional grading time, planning time on Friday from 1 to 2:43 for the staff. And next slide. I think I pass it off to Mr. Richard at this point.
All right. Good evening, everyone. I'm going to have some overlap here with elementary and middle school, but looking back at the spring semester, when we went to remote learning, we did not have any daily direct instruction. Students were kind of logging on and getting into their assignments when they could. We did have weekly overview of assignments. Attendance was difficult because students could sign on at any time. Teachers were taking attendance for today, tomorrow. So it was always a day behind. So some of our data on students logging in was probably not as great as it could have been. Our teachers did hold daily office hours. And this is when most of the time where teachers would set up Zooms for some of our students to have that face-to-face time. Teachers were giving feedback on student progress. As you know, we had a student choice for grading in the spring, and the primary learning management system was Google Classroom. As we move into the fall this school year, we were going to have a set schedule for our students and staff to meet every day, Monday through Thursday, which is going to be a nice schedule to get kids into routines where they're logging into each classroom. We'll continue with a weekly overview of all assignments. Attendance will be tracked by block each day, because kids will actually be logging in with their teachers, which will provide administrators and counselors and teachers more data to know who we really need to target to get to and find out what barriers there might be there for students who are not logging in to get their education. Daily office hours will continue. When you see our schedule, we'll have time in the morning and in the afternoons on Monday through Thursday, and Friday will be fully remote. Traditional grading will be what we will start with from day 1. We're going to continue with Google Classroom. As you know, the calendar affords us 6 days of PD to start the year to help our teachers prepare and to be ready to go for September 8th. We're kind of excited at the high school. We've always struggled to find PLC time for our teachers to collaborate with our schedule. So on Fridays, we're going to have scheduled PLC time for our teachers to meet with each other. And we know a lot of this will be continued PD as they bounce ideas off each other, talk about assessments and things like that. So we're really excited that we're able to provide that to our teachers. And also we'll have more contact with our parents through our virtual open houses and conferences that will be scheduled in the fall. Next slide, please. So our schedule, back one, please. Similar to the middle school, we're going to take advantage of the research that says high school students should be starting their day later on. So we're going to be running our 4 blocks with a lunch in the between. 55-minute classes, give kids and teachers a chance with some time in between each one. So we are asking that students log on in the beginning of each class, be with their teachers. So there'll be a start and finish. So there'll be some quality face time between students and teachers. Next slide, please. When we move to our hybrid schedule, we're going to be using our traditional early release schedule. So you see we do return to the earlier times. It'll be blocks 1, 2, 3, 4 with lunch at the end. Office hours will continue in the afternoon after the lunch period for our staff. Staff do have one day where they can have assigned makeup days, or typically it's been about 45 minutes of time after school, just additional office hours that we may be able to provide our students. Fridays, office hours will continue. Again, that'll be by appointment. The teachers and students can schedule. And we are going to continue with our PLC meetings on Fridays. I think that is it for the high school.
That's it. At this point, I'm going to turn it over to special ed.
Thank you. Excuse me. So for special education staff, the same expectations that were just outlined by elementary, middle, and high school are in place. We're going to continue to provide students with a free, appropriate public education. Special ed teachers and related service providers will be providing services as outlined in students' IEPs via virtual means during the remote learning period. And those vary just like they did in the spring: Zoom, Google, consultation with parents, etc. Special ed teachers and related service providers will need to establish schedules to provide such services and understand, and we all need to continue to understand to remain as flexible as possible as things change often, and some students are not able to access the scheduled times, so trying to keep that in mind as well. Our IDEA timelines for special education process will still be in effect, so we have to continue on with our case management duties. Meetings will continue to take place virtually. Even when we are back in hybrid model, we will continue with virtual meetings. We do need to hold meetings to determine what students will require compensatory services and how those services will be delivered, as well as in-person services and the extent of those services. And we hope that all students and their families, if applicable, are going to be participating in all the remote sessions that are offered. And we expect everybody to maintain open lines of communication.
Finally, the last slide, and I didn't, Greg is not here tonight, but that's not a bad thing. He's busy tied up with doing things. And to be honest with you, it's probably my fault if maybe we forgot to invite him. But the point is that there wasn't a lot of significant change in technology. I think he's come to the board. He was here last week talking about increasing the internet bandwidth. He's also responsible for our laptop distribution. This year, we've had staff will be able to email students using their Google account, and that's something that's new. The other thing that's happened, we continue to use Google Meets, Microsoft Teams, and Zoom meetings. I want to give a nice kudos to our technology department, who under unforeseen circumstances have made it work. Anytime you have or introduce a new variable, in this case, the distribution of our computers to the public and to our staff on a to the public on a one-to-one basis, that creates a whole set of issues and troubleshooting and what have you. And again, using what Masha said, we have to be flexible, understanding. We've come up with a plan to organize our technology and try to do the best we can. But in this environment, when so much is we're reliant on technology to communicate and to facilitate learning, and also just what I call workflow, it's always a challenge. So that was it in a nutshell. I was deliberate in being brief, as I'm sure there are some questions and comments. I just want to say thank you to everyone who participated in this. I know there were some faculty who are out there that looked at the schedule and might have some questions, comments. Get it. That's why we said it's organic. We're going to be flexible. We understand that there might be some tweaks as we go along the way, but certainly we'll work with the building principals and you to get those issues resolved. This is, like, as I shared with you at the beginning, a framework for us to get going. but also we're certainly willing and able to make some modifications. All of our professional development will take place online to start the school year. Teachers, the principals are going to make a schedule for teachers to come in if they need to pick up materials to start that remote learning planning. The only thing we ask is that we ask teachers and principals and administrators, anyone coming into the building, to adhere to that schedule, as we don't want a large concentration of people coming into the building at one time. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Mosley, Mr. Richard, Ms. Bagley, and Mr. Falzarano. I appreciate you all taking the time to come out to give an overview of the remote learning handbook. Been really struggling to remember to call it a handbook and not a plan. I am glad to see that we have this. I must say, I had an expectation based on our motion in May that this would have been gotten to everybody about 3 weeks ago, so teachers could be preparing and parents could be preparing, but I'm glad to see it now. I am certain that there are questions or comments. Mr. Norris indicated that he would like, so we'll start with him. Go ahead, Mr. Norris.
Thank you. So I just have a question about the hybrid. So I was happy to see that in remote learning and hybrid learning is very structured, because I know that was a problem last time where you could have classes all throughout the day. Sometimes you would wake up at 7, sometimes you could wake up at 10. But so I like the structured. And I see how that's going to work within the remote learning specifically, as we're going to have Zoom classes at your specific times during the day. But I'm just wondering how that's going to work during hybrid. I know we still want to keep that structure. You still have to somehow go to each class throughout the day, but is obviously that can't be Zoom. I don't know if that entails video, if somehow we get the video. I know we talked about that last week, or does that involve just doing an assignment for attendance, or I don't know if somebody could just clarify that, I guess.
Stephen, you are correct. That is going to be a difficult challenge for especially students who have chosen remote during that time. I think we will take advantage of the office hours. I think take advantage, like you said, of having check-ins through Google Classroom. But as you had a presentation, I think Ms. Rodriguez went over the tech issues, things like that, that we would have, or items that would need to be ordered for that to happen. So that is something we've been wrestling with and coming up with as best answers as we can. But yes, when we get to the hybrid, we definitely want to try and find ways to maximize teacher and student face-to-face time, screen time, so it continues. As you said, it's a pretty structured schedule when we're in remote, and how do we make that work once we get the hybrid?
Because I just want to, I was still confused, like, if you're not logging on, are you just taking an attendance of the day question? Is that you're doing the class for that hour? This seems like it's without any direct teacher communication, it could get a little fuzzy on when you have to do this class, when you don't. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Norris. As always, you ask very good questions. Just to piggyback on Mr. Norris's question regarding check-in times, etc. How will that work for students who have difficulty accessing the internet, one, and two, have you heard anything, do we have any information back yet about if teachers want the ability to stream classes?
I'm not on mute. I guess the first question is that, if students are having trouble accessing the internet, then that's going to be problematic. So we ask those families to work with the building principals to notify us or them, so we can come up with a solution to that. What Mr. Rodriguez shared with us probably about 2 or 3 weeks ago, he shared that Comcast is offering the hotspots throughout the entire city, which is a nice prop. Some of we recognize there's not a hotspot everywhere, So we'll take that on a case-by-case basis. I also heard from the presentation too that a little bit of a change that's going to be introduced is some opportunities for what we call paper-based assignments, and that's a nice quality that kind of balances the playing field. I also I forgot your last question, Ms. Raymond. I'm sorry. There was a
No, that's okay. I wanted to know if we have any updates about previously we talked at our last meeting and also at finance about the costs and the equipment needed for allowing teachers the opportunity to live stream or even record and then post videos of their lessons. And I'm wondering if we have any feedback from the teachers or from the principals about whether or not that's something that we should pursue.
Yeah, we haven't gotten any feedback yet. In all fairness, we haven't actually asked the question as well. We spent the majority of the last week kind of getting prepared for this, but also other matters as well. I know that Greg had a technology committee that was meeting regularly to vet these types of products. The one thing when I think Ms. Oda mentioned it last week, it sparked my mind. There's a product called an OWL, and it's really kind of a camera. It's like a motion detector. That's the best I can tell you. It's like a motion detector camera that you can position in your classroom, and it literally follows you around. It goes 360 around that. The question is, again, cost and professional development. We have not, the answer to your question, we don't have that information right now. We certainly will vet it to our teachers and to our administrators, but it's an excellent suggestion to start to think about that.
Okay, thank you. I saw Ms. Oden and then Ms. Johnson.
Thank you. I have technology problems. I have a couple questions. When I look at the schedules, and I'll just use the elementary one first, there's a time period for each subject. Does that mean it will be the same at all 12 elementary schools, or is there some ability to change that schedule for schools?
Dr. McKinney, are you there?
The feedback from the subgroup was for it to be consistent. So while it may not be like that every single day, the idea over the course of the year is that we're more consistent this year. The feedback that we received was there were some comparisons between schools and teachers and classrooms, and we're trying to be a little more consistent across the district.
Okay, thank you. Books, if a teacher has a couple of classes that are reading the same book, part of their unit, how are we going to deal with that? If they only have one set of books, will there be something online that we can pick up for them, or are they just going to have to do it at 2 different times?
So we are investing in digital subscriptions. There are some that have been approved at CNE meeting and are coming to the full board. There are other books that can be made available to students, like library books and other books. We do plan on doing drive-through and pick-up and drop-offs, and then pulling resources from all the schools. So teachers can use their personal libraries. Unfortunately, the guided reading materials are not available for distribution right now that we purchased. So we are trying to find ways around that. I don't know if I'm answering your question there, but
well,
it depends on the resource. It's just like with the Chromebooks. The more we give away, not everything comes back. So we are trying to find a balance of when and if we come back full person, that we still have the necessary resources to resume in-class instruction.
Okay. Often teachers told me that a lot of companies were allowing them to use the resources free last year.
Yep.
And have you checked to see what popular resources our teachers were using that we're going to have to pay for this year?
Well, I don't know if we're picking the most popular ones. We're picking the ones that we're already invested in that are adopted by our curriculum. So Learning A to Z provides books for students. We're using that. Capstone was recommended by the librarians. We're using that. We're trying to leverage all the resources we have from Heinemann that we spent a lot of money on. Lucy Calkins, Eureka. We invested in Mystery Science and Amplify. And the plan is to open up the libraries and follow what the NPL has done and allow kids to check out books and read as many as necessary.
Okay, and I have one more question. On page 5 of the handbook, the fourth bullet says, with coach and teacher input, the district will develop a scope and sequence that allows for consistency across grade levels. Can you ensure that the board get a copy of those documents when they are finished?
Yes,
Okay.
can speak for secondary, but yes, I mean, I don't see, I mean, if I give it to the superintendent, I'm assuming it will go to you, but, you know, we will do that and give it to him and then, but I'm assuming, sure.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Parker. Dr. McKinney, will you be able to do that for the elementary level?
I guess.
Go ahead.
Just for procedural pieces, is this something that goes to curriculum evaluation, or I'm just unclear. Are we looking for an addendum to these once it's approved?
No, I want to see a copy of what it says. It says, with coach and teacher input, the district will develop a scope and sequence that allows for consistency across grade levels. I don't care what committee it goes through, but I would like it to end up in the hands of board members.
Sure, no problem.
Okay, that's all I want. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Oden, and I'm certain that Ms. Brown and Dr. McKinney can put that in their queue for curriculum. That makes sense. However, time is of the essence, and I don't remember when the next curriculum committee meeting is, but we'll talk about that scheduling offline. I had Ms. Johnson with her hand up as well.
Thank you. First of all, I want to say you could tell a lot of hard work went into this remote learning handbook. We got it on Friday, and I think I've just about tore this whole thing apart between Friday and today. I have a lot of questions here. I'm not going to go through every one of them, but the first thing I'm going to say, again, I'd like a copy, and the board should have a copy of the Chromebook contract. And I want to see in that contract this time, who is responsible if these Chromebooks get damaged. The taxpayers, through their insurance, should not have to keep paying for this. Parents and students need the responsibility. It is a good lesson that if they're damaged, somebody will be responsible for it. I, for one, am tired of paying when parents aren't being responsible with their students. Week 1 and week 2, I believe that was at the secondary level. So week 1, you're gonna have periods 1 to 4, and week 2, you're gonna have periods 5 to 7. I'd like to know, when we're doing all this, how much education are our students really getting here? Because we're not getting everything that you would on a daily basis each week. So you're kind of going 1 week, one set of studies, and the next week. So I'm kind of curious, and I'd like to really see how this is going to play out with the students. I have a lot of concerns with the remote and with the hybrid 2.5 days. A lot of people have come up to me and said to me, well, if they're going in for 2.5 days, they're already in the school, why couldn't they go 2 full days? And that makes sense. Then I have teachers can access the building with permission from the building administrators in order to prepare lessons and materials for the students. And as I read through some of this, there's a question of safety. But if nobody's in the building and our teachers are required to wear masks, why can't they get in the building and go to the classrooms? There's not going to be anybody else really around. And I guess my question is, people are back to work. People are out there in the world with masks on now, or social distancing, whichever. Why aren't we at least having the teachers in the classroom if there's nobody else around to be able to work where they have their materials that they don't have to take it home and it's in their environment? So I'd like to kind of get that answered. Let's see what else. I'm just trying to hit on the important things that I kind of was highlighting and circling. Routine, I believe, with these students is very important, that hopefully we'll be able to get a routine that they're up, they have to sign in for class, and that kids aren't skipping classes, because the important thing is to keep these kids in a routine. Let's see, I've got some pages folded down here. One thing that I did like with the administration expectations here, support students and families in participating in their education. I think that's one of the most important statements out there. To be team players here and to get these kids engaged. I know parents have to work, so some of it's going to be hard for them, but we need to engage these students now. I talked about the buildings, protocols. And Fridays. What exactly is going to be done on Friday? If the students and the teachers are working Monday through Thursday, what exactly is Friday going to be? Can somebody answer me that?
Yes. Keith, could you just reiterate what you said Fridays were going to be, please, for the high school, then we'll work our way back.
Yep, at the high school, we're going to have scheduled PLCs. I think we're looking at 8 to 9:30 in the mornings for teachers to have PLC time. The rest of the day can be used for setting up small groups that the teachers want to reach out to, students reaching out to the teachers, scheduling Zoom or Google Meet sessions. Maybe they have questions, maybe they need help on assignments, where it'll be a meeting where it'll be just kind of more one-on-one, maybe to ask those questions that they might not need to ask or would not feel comfortable asking in the full classroom, and just getting that extra support. During this time too, it provides teachers to post what the potential assignments would be for the following week and getting those weekly overviews out to set up for the next week. That was one of the things that we got feedback from last spring when we kind of did this, jumped in really quickly. Is just, making sure that weekly objectives were kind of posted so parents and students kind of knew what to expect. So we wanted to provide time for the teachers to be able to get that out on a Friday. That way, when, students and parents are logging in to the Google Classroom, checking to see what's out there, they'll kind of have a sense of what the week will look like. So it'll provide some collaborative time, provide some opportunities for teachers to work with small groups of students or one-on-one with students. And also allows them to just prepare for the week so that expectations are known moving forward.
Would you like to add anything differently than what Keith mentioned, or in guard for the elementary? Either or. And then Miss Brown, I'm sorry, Miss Johnson, excuse me. I will get to your Chromebook agreement.
Okay. And one other thing here. It says
question. You got a question about that Friday, so we're going to answer it.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I thought he didn't have an answer because you had said something.
Yeah, an answer.
So from the middle school perspective, there's major overlap with the high school and exactly the same on our end. We're using that time. Don't even need to reiterate what Mr. Richard said because that's exactly what we'll be doing. So much of the expectations for the following week, we're not sure that we're going to follow that. Maybe we're going to keep it open to some broader essential questions about what could be coming the following week. You don't want to pigeonhole the teachers in that aspect if they want to broaden something that goes into the following week. So that would be maybe the slight difference there, but otherwise it's exactly as Mr. Richard said from the middle school perspective.
I think my colleagues at the middle and the high school level have summarized it pretty well. I do think this is an opportunity for school and district PLCs and for all of us to support one another through a challenging year. So thank you.
Miss Johnson, if you go to our website on the COVID channel, you'll find the agreement with the Chromebooks there. You want to review those documents. And if you have any other questions, please let me know and we'll certainly clarify them.
Okay, and one other thing. It says here, class time, live Zoom, Google Meet, Monday through Thursday, attendance, and daily check-in in 10 to 15 minutes, objectives. Then it says, teachers should remain on for the entire time to work with students in case they need help. However, students may choose to log off to work independently when appropriate. This portion of the block does not require that all students are logged in for the duration of the class unless a teacher requires them to do so. Would they be allowed to leave the classroom? Where they were able to log off here?
What we were trying to illustrate there is that they're not going to be on Zoom face-to-face for the whole 55 minutes. We're going to want to give teachers discretion on how they might use that middle. So it'll be important to have a beginning and an end. So they check in with their students, they take attendance, they give the objectives of what the expectations are for today. At that time, they may ask the students to turn off their video, sign off, maybe because they posted a short reading and some questions in the Google Classroom. Ask the students to work on that for a half hour. We'll return right at the end of class, get back together, touch base. Anybody have any trouble with that? Get a quick exit slip to see how students did with the work and then move on. So we kind of saw definitely at the start and the finish, we're certainly important to kind of be together, to check in and then to check out to make sure kids are moving forward with what the expectations were. But that middle section, we thought was important to have teachers to have discretion on how they might use that time.
Okay, when will we get the numbers on the enrollment, the total enrollment broken down, the total enrollment, the hybrid and the remote, to see how many students are returning and how many parents have removed their students from the district? And also, when are we going to be sending parents a survey to see if they like where the children are between the hybrid and the remote, to make sure that our students are learning? I think this is important as we go along, because last year we kind of, in the springtime, got thrown into this. This time we have enough time to make sure that we're moving in the right direction and that our students are not falling behind. Thank you.
As we shared earlier, we're still getting those numbers. Also, that's not a district-wide list that came out. Those numbers came out in terms of hybrid learning. We're very specific to the building. So you're going to see different variations from one building to the next. And we still have 1,700 kids that still didn't react to the survey. Keep in mind, we also have individuals coming and going within the district as well. But as soon as we get the numbers settled, we'll get them out to the board just to give you, all of you, some updated information on where we're at. We'll also give you some information in terms of our teachers as well and our faculty who've decided, what model based on some of their conditions, health concerns, is appropriate for them as well. Just to reiterate, again, a level of flexibility, a level of understanding. These are not easy times for our families who are struggling to return their kids or do a remote. And conversely, our faculty is also wondering and trying to decide what's model that's going to keep them safe and effective as well. I just want to say thank you to the teachers, thank you to the administrators who have worked 7 days a week tirelessly to make this happen. And as we heard earlier, we don't know what curveballs are coming our way, but we're still at the bat trying to hit it out of the park. So thank you for everyone for all your effort on this. Oh, I'm sorry. I forgot one thing, Ms. Johnson. You asked when we're going to get the survey, whether it's going to work or not. I would say we'd have to move into the hybrid model, give it a couple of weeks or so, and then do a survey to our parents and community.
Thank you.
Thank you, Leslie. I think that's very helpful. I am curious about, as you collate all of that data from the survey about which schools have which students, if we're going to run into any problems with social distancing. So can you please keep the board informed of that as well? Because if we have different levels at different schools, and whether or not, I guess the question still remains, what happens with staff?
Yeah, I think that's an excellent point, Ms. Raymond. I think the question really is the enforcement of social distancing and how do you enforce it? And we don't have an answer to that. We're asking everyone to do their part, including little kids and students. And that's going to be hard when you haven't been around people in a long time. I was at the back to school event last week, and thank you to those teachers and administrators who were facilitating that. And I saw a lot of rule breaking. But what do you do? I mean, I can't stop a hug or just a thank you, and that's just across the board. But I think we just have to be very conscientious of that. But we're human first. Totally get it.
Thank you. Ms. Brown?
Thank you, Ms. Raymond. So in the spring, we were thrown into this it was more like emergency teaching than remote teaching. So I think we need to look forward into this semester with some quality control and also teacher support, because they're being thrown a lot of stuff in a short amount of time, and they're being very adaptable, which I think is great. So in that vein, is there a schedule in which administrators or team leads can check in with their teachers to see how remote or the hybrid is going for them, to check where they are in their curriculum delivery, whether they're, what point they're at, whether they're getting to all the materials, so that we can, or even check if we need to check in with families who still aren't connecting. Can we do that on a schedule, or is there something in place that we can make sure that we're checking in regularly?
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to speak. I'll take a stab at the question, and then Garth and the principals and the Anthony can jump in. What you're really talking about, curriculum guys are pacing and really taking that temperature, or what we call in teacher dip, like dipsticking. So with that said, we have our coaches that help in that phase. We also have our principals that actually take part in that. At the high school level, you certainly have department heads that participate in that as well, along with the assistant principals that do evaluations. Part of this is this is the first time, I don't think anyone can tell us that this is the first time in the history of education that people are not going traditionally back to school the way we used to. So that's going to take a time to get off the ground. So that has already been in place. The question is really around how do we gauge and take that temperature. So that happens in our PLCs that we would hold on that Friday, but we also have faculty meetings and professional development where we break out. At the elementary school, it would be at the grade level. At the middle school, it would be at the team level. And at the high school, it would be at the department level. I'm looking at Keith, looking back at me. Did I capture that, Keith? How did I do? I mean, I'm speaking. I mean, I was a former principal. Did I get it right, Garth?
Spot on. So I think we're going to be lucky with our PLC times on those Fridays at the high school level. Those meetings are headed by our head teachers. Think of them as department heads. Other things too, I think Ms. Brown talked about students who aren't connecting. We kind of have a practice with kids who have not logged in for 3 consecutive days. The teacher notifies the counselor and the administrator. We're going to have weekly attendance meetings with our counselors and APs, who then kind of follow up with the parents and students to find out what barriers there are to kind of help out to get those kids back on track. Working with our APs this summer, we're going to set up monthly academy meetings, we call it. They'll be optional for teachers to drop in and kind of just share what's going on, what's working well, what's not, and where can we be supports. We meet weekly with our head teachers as well, so they'll be reporting back to us about PLCs or what teachers may need. So we have quite a few scheduled meetings that will be happening throughout the week, where we'll be able to, I think, collect that data and that feedback to make sure that if we need to make any changes or arrangements or accommodations to our schedule or for our staff and students.
And then Chuck, last year, during that last 3 months of school, I met weekly with each one of my teams. I can't say, because they're not here, what Element Fairgrounds did, but again, what Mr. Richard alluded to is that built-in PLC time doesn't necessarily mean that we won't be injecting ourselves into a team meeting to find out what's going on, how we can better support them. We're going to use all 3 of our counselors and our 4th person who's the outreach coordinator at our building. We're going to get a halftime. We have a halftime person on top of the 4 counselors at Fairgrounds and Pennachuck, utilizing them to reach out to those families. And again, following that three absentee policy. It's not so much a policy, but a marker to then reach out to see if there's further things that we can do to support those families. There's certainly, again, as Dr. Mosley said about an hour ago, in regards to a lot of the times that the families weren't engaging, it was a device issue or a bandwidth issue, and hopefully we can help utilize our connections with utility companies to get them what they need to get on and engage.
Thank you. I'm glad to hear that. So I guess my last or second question is, well, it's more a comment and asking if there's any feedback. I'm very concerned about the A week and B week schedule of the middle school level. I know that was built in there to make it so we don't have to have 7 classes a day. During the remote learning meetings and during the scheduling meetings of the summer, I know there were several other schedules thrown out that still would also limit those kids to 3 or 4 classes a day. And I have faith the teachers are going to do the best under their circumstances, but with only 50% of the class time, there's no possible way to get through 100% of the material at a grade level. And I'm especially concerned with subjects like math and reading that require regular practice for skill mastery, especially if you've got kids that have slipped this summer or they're going on to 8th grade from middle school, and now they're going to be in an algebra class, a totally different, it's not integrated math, it's a different thing they're looking at. Basically, how are we going to address those core curriculum needs with this schedule? I mean, 50% of the days means 50% of the material. That's not the fault of the teachers. It's just the way it is. Is there any alternative plan for that?
So for now, as we've alluded to, the handbook is really an evolving piece, and hopefully that evolution is allowed to occur. So if I'm going to give you a broad painted picture of that schedule was put out there as something we could possibly do if we can have some time, which I know we're running short on, to go back with the secondary piece from the middle school, to sit with Mr. Parker and look at, is that the most effective way, and what can we do in those 4 periods, week to week, day to day, to adjust the times, not so much the time per class, but how many times they meet per week. We can get a little bit of leniency on that in terms of that conversation. I'm going to leave that up to Mr. Parker to allow us to open up that conversation with him and then bring it to Dr. Mosley, if that's all right.
If I can just interject,
Sorry, I'm talking and I have to unmute myself. And so we will have that conversation this week. Okay, we do not have an answer for that now, but we will. Okay, it's on our agenda, but we will deal with that and you will have an answer by week's end. If that's okay.
Thank you.
I'll just have a caveat to this. There's nothing that we're proposing tonight or the next couple of weeks that's going to ever replace that in-person traditional school day we had 2 years ago. There's just nothing. And so we will try something. The first thing that came to my mind is having some supplementary material available for kids and parents that want to that we can collaborate with to try to make up some of that time that is missing. Some of it has to do with what we call some like cross-curricular opportunities where the kids could practice reading and writing in different disciplines. Like it's typically known as STEAM or STEM projects. So we have to get creative and not trying to replace, but just try to ameliorate some of the deficiencies, as you've mentioned, Ms. Brown.
Thank you.
Ms. Brown, Ms. Bishop, and then Ms. Oden had a follow-up.
Thank you. I had a quick question about the non-core academic staff members, so specifically social workers, school psychologists, guidance counselors. I know we'll probably be addressing this in whatever contracts are coming our way, but given that the kids have such a limited time during the day to do academics, I'm wondering if staff that are providing the support can have non-traditional hours and working with the students and the families outside of the academic day to check in, especially with the students who seem to be struggling with remote learning, with the families who are having a challenging time managing multiple kids on one device. Are we able to modify those so that we can best utilize everybody that we're working with, reduce kids missing opportunities for education, and really kind of tap into an extra resource that we haven't had because we've had to follow traditional hours in meeting families' needs and having those conversations and being more flexible to our families, which is exactly what we're asking our teachers and students to be. That's it.
I guess I'll let Keith and Gabe talk a little bit about how the counselors work in this remote setting. I think everything is all relative when you're working from home. And so I think there were some opportunities where our counselors, I say tradition, I guess you're probably, we're making reference to 8 to 4, but certainly, I think that there are some opportunities here. So I don't work directly with the counselors, but I know Keith and Gabe can provide some commentary on that.
Yeah, I mean, our counselors work very closely with their students. They create great relationships with the kids throughout the year. So those kids were often reaching out to them, and they were touch base with them, checking up on grades, following up with students who were struggling. They were meeting with the assistant principals, going over kids that we thought could certainly be at risk. I would never say our counselors or any of our teachers work to, those contractual hours. They're always working well beyond, whether that's a phone call or an email. So not sure about the modifying of their contract. That would probably be a conversation with Dr. Mosley and the union, but I would hate to say that I don't think our counselors are hanging up the phone at 2:13 at the end of the day. Any of our teachers are, or, email. So I think, especially, I can speak for South, our team is always reaching out to kids and doing what's best by them. So I think that's probably one of the best resources we have at South is our staff. All teachers, all adults in there doing what's best for kids. So that doesn't concern me too much because I know that they do what is needed to make sure a kid is being successful.
I really can't say it any better. I'll just give you for instance, we had a couple of times last year where students were outside of the contractual workday, not feeling mentally well, and we're reaching out to the counselors sometimes 6:30, 7 o'clock at night, regularly checking their emails, did what they needed to do, what was right by the child around that time. So they work pretty much endlessly. We can't thank them enough and be more appreciative of them. So.
No, I think they are fantastic, and I'm sure they are modifying their schedule. I'm just wondering if there is a way that we as a district can help make it so they're not working those 13, 14-hour days that they were working. I mean, if we know kids are going to be dedicated to academics until 12:30, 1 o'clock, could they start their day at noon and work a modified schedule, not adding to what they're doing, even though they're probably already adding to it anyway, but we as a district being more accommodating to meeting their needs. But I'm going to guess that's probably a conversation we have to have with the union, and if those staff members are even willing to kind of, well, I'm sure they're willing to be flexible. They're fantastic. But without, I don't want to force anybody into anything, but just being flexible.
Yeah, I mean, we could certainly broach it with the union, and if there's an interest or a need or a want for it, I would say that one of the challenges about working remotely has been exactly what you identified, Ms. Bishop, shedding it off. How do you get an email at 8 o'clock and say, I'm going to wait for tomorrow? And these are kids. These are kids are night owls, and right now they're sending, they sometimes think adults are up at 10, 11 o'clock at night, and we're not. We're drooling and we're getting ready for the morning. I'm sorry, I shouldn't say that. We're on public. I'm drooling. But I think we all. I'm looking at Sharon. I'm looking at who else? Oh, the 2 high school principals and who else is my 4 a.m. Stacy Hines. We're up early in the morning, ready to go. And for Keith and the principals, we're waiting for the next emergency. For the administration, we're getting ready for the day. So I think some of the challenges is actually we heard from the union. If I get an email from a high schooler at 11 o'clock, do I answer it? My response is, you're not obligated to answer it. So that decision's up to you. I've never sent an email in this district without getting another email back. So just, you know what I mean? So,
Yeah.
We'll certainly, if it becomes an issue, we'll have that discussion with the union, sure.
Yeah. And then just one more, if we're sending kids home with musical instruments for the arts and stuff, can we hold off on the recorders this year?
I don't have an answer for that.
Maybe some spoons, just something a little quieter.
I think there was already an auto ship from Amazon coming to your address, Ms. Bishop.
Oh no.
I'm sorry.
Send you the drum. The drum kit's coming your way.
I'd rather drums than the recorder. That's all I'm saying. I'm just kidding. I think we're doing a great job. I think we're seeing a lot of headway. So I'm excited to see what happens. But thank you for entertaining all of these options.
Okay. Thank you, Miss Bishop. And speaking for the night owls, I think those of us who send emails at 11, 12, 1 o'clock in the morning, we're not expecting answers until the next day. And I certainly hope that you 4 a.m., 5 a.m. people are not expecting answers back at those insane hours either. So I think we all need to be a little bit flexible here. Okay, Ms. Oden, you said you had a follow-up question?
Yes, I just want to say we're getting a lot of emails from teachers that are very specific. They're working in the classroom. They have lots of questions that we can't answer. So will those questions go on the question website that is already running, or do you have a separate one for teachers?
The best way I can, thank you, Ms. Odo, is if they could just send it to the COVID-19 at nashua.edu, and we can start to disseminate those or organize those questions in a way that we can react to them. I don't know what building they're coming from or the specific questions they are. So the teachers did get that email.
Okay.
I also put it in the message board here, but that's the only way that we're going to be able to track this, the information. So the intent is to get a reaction to those questions and then add them to the current existing 14-page document. So it'll end up being 16 pages or 19 pages. But then the question becomes, if someone has a question, then it's kind of, I don't want to seem like we're sending them off to purgatory. Before you ask the question, go read the 14-page document and then come back with your question. So a lot of these questions are starting to seem a little bit, they might seem redundant, but we also want to be responsive too.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, are there any other questions at this time regarding the remote learning handbook? No? Okay, so I think we know now what the next steps are, and that is working on the MOUs with the teachers. Hopefully we'll have some updates on that for Wednesday. Parents and community members and anybody out there with questions ought to email them to the COVID-19 at nashua.edu, or call or email the building principal because they would know the most specific kind of things for each school. Is that right, Dr. Mosley?
Yes.
Okay, excellent. So hopefully we can move forward with that. All right, so it is 9 o'clock. We have several things still on the agenda, but I think they'll be quick. So my suggestion to the board is that we quickly do the 1, 2, 3 finance and operations items that we didn't get to last week. And then if we think it's going to be something there's a long session, table it until Wednesday. So
do we need to make a motion to extend the meeting, Heather?
no, it's a meeting, so we do.
Okay.
That only goes for the regular meetings.
Okay.
To the principals, Mr. Richards, Mr. Falzerano, who came this evening. You're welcome to stay as long as you like, but you are not required to be here while we talk about finance things. So thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it. Finance, bus contract. Ms. Oden, did you have a motion regarding approving the bus contract? This was from leftover from Wednesday nights under the finance portion. Ms. Oden, are you there? Okay, I'm not hearing from her.
Sorry.
Oh, that's okay. So, Ms. Oden, we have 3 things left over from the finance and operations portion of last Wednesday's meeting. We have the bus contract, bus fees, and the transfer report. Did you have motions for these items?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
I move to approve the busing contract with First Student as presented.
Okay. Is there a second? Mr. Guarino seconded it?
No. Wow.
Oh, Ms. Timmons seconded it. I'm sorry. Okay. Is there any discussion needed regarding the bus contract? Yes. Ms. Brown.
Thank you. Let's see, I had a couple of questions. One was, in the event that we do not return to school, normally we do provide the charter schools and private schools in the area bus services, but on those days that the school is canceled for emergency services, we also don't they cancel school also. Will we still provide those services on those days? If they return to school and we do not?
Yes, we will provide the services to the charter and private schools. That's by law. We need to do that. So we will, at this point, the plan is to do that.
Thank you. Also, I know we've got a lot of area, both businesses and nonprofits who are taking kids in as to assist them with the remote learning. Will, like typically, I think, and I could be mistaken on this, but I think the Boys and Girls Club and the Nashua YMCA, we typically bus students to there for the aftercare program. Are we still providing those services for a hybrid day to those other remote locations if they're enrolled in those?
Well, we do provide some services, but it's pretty limited. You know, I think we provide 1 bus a day for the Boys and Girls Club. So I would assume we would continue with that. If there's a larger need, we'd have to look into see if we can do it or not. It'll depend on the other routes.
Okay, so something like, if a student had the opportunity or was in school on a Tuesday and then they were going to spend the second half of their day at the YMCA remote program, does it depend on how many students need to go there to offer that service again, or are we still going to continue that?
To be honest, on the half days, I guess the answer is if we were doing it last year, we'll continue to do it. If we need to add something, we're going to have to take a look at how that works in the schedule.
Okay, thank you. Let's see. And my last question was about at what point do we discuss if we don't need full busing services to the school? when does that come up in the contract that we talk about whether we're going to pay the full amount of the contract or how much of it we're going to pay?
Okay, we did discuss that with a lot of the unknowns involved with this year. We couldn't come to actual terms on language. A lot of it's going to depend on if the bus drivers are going to go to unemployment or if they're going to continue to get paid. There's a few other extenuating circumstances. So the way we have the contract is after 2 weeks of, so let's say, I'll just pick a date, November 15th, we decide we're going full remote the rest of the year. We would then sit down with the bus company and come up with a plan. But that would involve a number of different discussions. You know, what about the bus drivers? What about some of these other things? And if we can't come to any agreement at all, we could simply terminate the contract. Then if we did that, then we'd have to go out for the following year and rebid the contract again. Do we want to do that? Maybe, maybe not. So it's kind of open-ended. The other option was to try to come up with like a percent, let's say 60%. But if this is a long-term thing, do we even want to pay 60% of something? So that's sort of how we left it.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to make sure that there was some kind of contingency plan in there for that. I appreciate it, Mr. Donovan.
Okay.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments regarding the bus contract? Okay, seeing none. Mr. Guarino, could you please call the roll on the motion to approve the bus contract?
Okay. On the motion, Ray Guarino votes yes. Paula Johnson,
Yes.
Sandra Ziem,
Sandra?
Yes.
Thank you.
Jen Bishop,
Yes.
Sharon Giglio,
Yes.
Jessica Brown,
Yes.
Heather Raymond,
Yes.
Buddy Oden,
Yes.
Gloria Timmons.
Yes.
Motion carries 9-0.
Okay. I move to not charge high school students a bus fee from August 2020 to December 31st, 2020. The board will revisit this in January 2021.
Second. Okay, so the motion was made by Ms. Oden to waive the high school students bus fee from August to December 2020, seconded by me. Any questions or comments? Mr. Norris?
So I'm assuming this just covers bus fees. Does this, has there been any talk of doing parking fees to parking passes too, or no? Because I know it seems like a shame to pay the full price if you're only going to school for 1 day a week after we go online for a month or two.
Look into it.
Oh, I can, this motion only speaks to the bus. It was part of the discussion we had about the contract. That would be another motion that the board would need to bring up because these funds are funds approved by the board. So maybe at the next meeting that can be discussed.
Thank you.
Yeah, perhaps Mr. Donovan and Ms. Oden could put it on their next finance agenda. And that would give Mr. Donovan a chance to look into all the numbers and how all that works.
We can do that.
Because I think it was complicated last year.
Okay, and the final motion is move to approve the transfer report.
Oh, wait, we didn't
vote.
Oh,
we didn't vote on the bus fees.
Okay.
Okay. Any other comments or questions on waiving the bus fees for the high school students? Okay, Mr. Guarino, could you please call the roll?
Okay. Ray Guarino votes yes. Paula Johnson,
Yes.
Sandra Ziem,
She said yes, but I don't think we could hear her well.
Jen Bishop,
Yes.
Sharon Giglio,
Yes.
Jessica Brown,
Yes.
Heather Raymond,
Yes.
Dottie Oden,
Yes.
Gloria Timmons,
Yes.
motion carries 9-0.
Okay, Ms. Oden, transfer report?
I'm on mute, I'm sorry. Move to approve the transfer report of July 2020 as presented at the August 11th, 20 Finance and Operations meeting.
I'll second.
Okay. Motion by Ms. Oden, seconded by Ms. Johnson. Any discussion on the transfer report? I encourage people with questions to watch the Finance Committee. All right, Mr. Guarino?
Okay, on the motion, Ray Garino votes yes. Paula Johnson,
Yes.
Sandra Ziem,
Yes.
Jen Bishop,
Yes.
Sharon Gilio,
Yes.
Jessica Brown,
Yes.
Heather Raymond,
Yes.
Dottie Oden,
Yes.
Gloria Timmons,
Ms. Timmons, you're on mute.
I said yes, I'm sorry.
Okay, no problem. Motion carries 9-0.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Guarino, and thank you, Ms. Oden. I don't think we missed anything else on finance. Okay, so we had scheduled this evening a non-public discussion. However, it's 9:21 p.m. So I'd like to suggest that we table that discussion. I'm wondering if people are available tomorrow evening at 7. I have something to do earlier in the evening. Is anyone not available tomorrow at 7? Okay, I don't see anybody. Dr. Mosley, did you raise your hand?
Yeah, I didn't know where, I don't know if you need me. Maybe it's just a board matter. I'm not sure.
I think at this point it's just a board matter.
Sorry.
I will ask the board, and if people would like to have your presence, then I will send you an email.
Okay, I was just saying, I'm not sure if I can be there. That's why I was saying, I think if you don't need me, then it's fine.
No, I think we've scheduled this for Wednesday as well, but 2 days would be nice. So perhaps we could do part of it tomorrow night and then part of it Wednesday night.
Okay.
If that works. Okay.
All right.
All right, great. So we will meet again tomorrow evening at 7 p.m. Via Zoom for just that non-public. And then our next public meeting is Wednesday at 6 p.m. And on that evening, we have personnel recommendations, preschool, and perhaps the MOUs with our various unions regarding starting school remotely. Okay, does anybody else have any other business for this evening? Yes, Ms. Timmons.
I'd like to make a motion to adjourn.
Okay.
I'll second it.
Okay, all right. Ms. Timmons makes the motion to adjourn, seconded by Ms. Johnson. Mr. Guarino, please call the roll.
Okay, on the motion to adjourn, Ray Garino votes yes. Paula Johnson,
Yes.
Sandra Ziem,
Yes.
Jen Bishop,
Yes.
Sharon Gilio,
Yes.
Jessica Brown,
Yes.
Heather Raymond,
Yes.
Dottie Oden,
Yes.
Gloria Timmons.
Yes.
Motion carries 9-0, 9:24 p.m.
Okay, thank you. And I will see the board members tomorrow at 7. And